Blog Talk Radio.
Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Pick Lillian Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show on Blog Talk Radio. I'm your host, Jumpin' John Prevost, and with me, as always, my partner in crime, Judge Ray Jaffe. So, Judge, another fantastic week of football, another fantastic night to talk about it. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, John. Looking forward to it. We suffered through the toughest week of the season as far as the number of teams with byes, so all gravy from here.
Yes, that was 6 teams, and it's the only week that will happen, so I'm sure there's a lot of people that were rushing for some fill-ins, and got a couple names that were going to be coming up that may have fit the bill for you. So we got 4 more teams on bye this week, so let's get that out of the way. Just to remind everyone to get their lineup straight. And that would be Baltimore, Buffalo, Cincinnati, and Houston. So all you Joe Flacco owners, make sure you take him out of your lineup.
If you didn't do it already after last week's performance.
Oh, yeah. So I feel bad, but there was definitely a good call on that, and that will be coming up later. And that was by the judge. So good call on that. But we're going to start off, just want to make sure everyone knows there's a couple injuries we're going to get to. We're going to get to some injury replacements we need to add. And our favorite segment of the night will be at the end, and that will be our studs, and sleepers. But let's start us off, because I have a question for you, Ray. There were a couple big performances, a couple really big performances, and I need to know from the expert if they're for real. And I got to start off with someone. My personal favorite, possibly, of all of my fantasy players, drafted them on 4 teams this year, gone down with the ship on many of them because of it. Who am I going to mention?
If your wife knew how much you loved Chris Johnson, I think there'd be some household problems.
Well, there already are, but it has nothing to do with Chris Johnson. So you leave him out of it, Ray. But yes, Chris Johnson, 195 yards on, I believe it was 18 touches and 2 touchdowns. Did most of the damage in the first half. And, I got to say, this is, I guess, the second big game, but obviously that's a huge game. Is he for real?
I think as some sportscasters used to say a while back, welcome Chris Johnson to the 2012 NFL football season in Week 7. So, it's very funny. We talk about Chris Johnson a lot because he's sort of, was the back and fell off the train last year and all kinds of problems. But he's sort of repeating the same cycle, it looks like. Last year, training camp pulled out, really, really rough start to the season, started to come into shape. This year, everyone sort of thought he'd come out of the gates in good shape, no training camp issues, no injury issues, but, got really very, very limited production for 6 weeks, and now he's back. He's back. So, no, I think he's for real. The talent's always been there. The problem, like we talked about on the show, the problem as much as anything has been the Titans' line has been brutal. He by far led the league in most contact behind the line of scrimmage, so he wasn't even getting a chance. So if they get the line issues squared away with the right matchups, which they certainly had last week, Chris Johnson is back on the radar.
Yes, and it is funny. We mentioned after a couple games that he was actually getting his first contact behind the line of scrimmage. So there's definitely some issues that were going on. And his best game prior to this was against arguably the best defense, Houston. He's had a couple duds against a couple easy teams, and he does have, I believe it was Indy coming up. So there's some opportunity, but then the schedule gets harder. So I think, the answer may lie somewhere in the middle. He may be back. He may not be Chris Johnson of old, and definitely opportunistic possibly now. But, I guess you got to watch out a little bit. But for those of us who drafted him first round, there may not be a whole lot of other opportunities for players to get in there, so you may have to roll with them.
Yeah, I think you're right. Against Indy this week, I think he'll have should have another really, really solid game, and maybe that'll put the naysayers aside, and hopefully you can take Chris Johnson to the bank after that.
That would be nice, because that would be would really help me make the playoffs. I'm just worried about making the playoffs for many of my teams, and as I said, I have him on 4, so I'm hoping for big things from him. But so yeah, ride him while you got him, right?
Figuratively, you mean? Because I know how much you do like Chris Johnson.
Now, come on, now this is a family show, occasionally at least. All right, yeah. So Chris Johnson is doing well. Plug him in your lineup next week, and then and then we'll have to see, just because the schedule does get a little bit tougher. He's got Chicago in week 9 and Miami in week 10. So it's then a bye in week 11. But after that, it's actually pretty much fantasy gold. And I did write about that in my If Only column about his problems and his upcoming schedule. So guys, check that out on our website, www.kickassfantasyfootball.com. All right, enough with Chris Johnson. The man loves out of the way. We're going to go to one of your crushes, or at least from your team. And I'm going to ask you, 8 receptions, 89 yards, 2 touchdowns. It's not his first big game, but I figured he's worth another mention. And that would be Randall Cobb. And my question to you, is he for real? Is he Jesse Jennings' replacement, or is he going to be a solid contributor from here on out?
No, I think he's definitely for real. I mean, you just look at the numbers. His last 4 games, he's been among the top wide receivers in the league. 7 for 66, 4 for 82, 7 for 102, 8 for 89. Got to the end zone twice last week. Greg Jennings. It's funny. We talked about him sort of coming into this year, that sort of thought he might take a step back. Whether it's injuries or the concussions. Whatever it is, it's Greg Jennings obviously has not been on the field as much, has taken a step back, and I do think Randall Cobb's filling that space. Green Bay is sort of starting to click on all cylinders, as they say. So I like Cobb. I think he's definitely a flex wide receiver 3 start solid right now, and could even graduate to a 2. If he continues to get the amount of looks he's getting.
Well, that's considering all the weapons they have on Green Bay, that's sort of a bold statement. I don't disagree, and I'm wondering, Jennings, I believe, is in his contract year, and I'm not so sure he'll be back. So there's the possibility that either A, he kind of shuts it down, not wanting to get hurt, knowing he's going to go to another team, or B, Green Bay is in no hurry to get him back, figuring they're not going to get anything out of him next year. So let's see what they can work with this year, because that's what they're going to go with. So it's going to be interesting. Plus, as plotting as Cedric Benson is, Alex Green hasn't shown much to date, so they may not have much of a running game to rely on. So I think you're right. I think Randall Cobb is here to stay.
Yeah, I like Cobb. Good matchup this week, of course, against Jacksonville. I would certainly get him back in your lineup, and certainly ride him while he's hot. And I think he could wind up being hot the rest of the year. Sort of like, I'm not going to put him up in the class of the breakout that Jordy Nelson had, but you sort of see the same. Rodgers fixes in on guys, and they do have a lot of weapons, but he still has his teacher's pets, so to speak. So it could be that Cobb's going to be one of those guys the rest of the year.
All right, let's move on to a surprising team, we'll say, so far this year. They started off hot, they pulled down a bit. A couple of new kids coming on the block. Arizona. First off, Larod Stevens-Howling. 20 rushes for 140 yards and a touchdown. And, who saw that coming this week against Minnesota? I had him as my sleeper last week, so obviously I got it mixed up. And I had him on my bench and any of the teams. I even dropped him in a league or 2. So it didn't do me much good this week. 140 yards and a touchdown. Against Minnesota. Is Larod Stevens-Howling for real?
Is he for real? I'm going to say, and our crack staff here, John, did some fantastic work in sort of peeling back the onion on Larod Stevens-Howling. So I would say, based on some Mitigating factors? No. There might be a big rush, a big line at the door on the waiver claims for Lerod. Stevens, Howlings, one, he has too many names, and two, he has a brutal schedule coming up. Arizona has a brutal schedule coming up. And John, you're aware they have San Francisco, which is, I mean, to the point where we've made a rule on this show that you cannot pick a running back against San Francisco as your dud of the week. So I would not look for him much from next week. He has Green Bay coming up after that, which if Green Bay is clicking, which they certainly seem to be, not a vaunted defense, but also not a defense where you probably expect 25 rushes because I expect Arizona could be playing from behind. So then a bye's coming up in there. So I just don't know that he's going to be able to sort of, build off of this game. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I agree. It is a brutal schedule. For some reason, it seemed to work against Minnesota. I believe the game was in Arizona, so maybe there's a little bit of a home and away difference there. And then, Beanie Wells is coming back. So I'm not so sure he doesn't go right back into a starting role. William Powell was the favorite to win the job over Lerod. He didn't have a good game. He fumbled early, so there's a lot of mitigating factors as well. I mean, maybe you have to pick him up if you're desperate, but I wouldn't expect much from him.
Yeah, I think he's probably, this week I wouldn't touch him. I mean, if he's still starting against Green Bay, you might take a chance with him. But I think certainly in leagues where you pay and you put in a big share of your money for hot players, I'd be very careful with moving in too much on Lerod Stevens.
Okay. On a quick note, is a player we've mentioned before, Brandon Weeden. He had another solid game, 264 yards, 2 touchdowns, and I guess I have a question: is he for real, or is he just more of a product of bad defenses? So what's your take on Brandon Weeden?
I think it's a little bit of both. I don't love Brandon Weeden. I think he's okay. He has done well against some of the. I think he's got 3 straight games with 2 touchdown passes, so solid. I'm excited because I think he's going to be celebrating his 40th birthday this year as a rookie, so he's got that going for him. But in all seriousness, I mean, he's a rookie, but he's obviously, you would expect more mature than your average rookie starting quarterback. But I think he's at best a matchup play. 2-quarterback league, in some of these, in the week 6, 7, 8, 9, where there's a lot of bye teams going on, bye weeks going on, might be worth taking a look at. Okay, this week against San Diego, but certainly not a guy I'd put a lot of stock in. I wouldn't want to see him starting for me more than once or twice during the course of a year.
Yeah, and he had the Giants, Cincinnati, and then Indy for his past 3 games. So some pretty good defenses to get some numbers against. If you're in a 2-quarterback league, or if you're really desperate for the bye week fill-in, you may want to look his way. But I'm not so sure. Let's take a look at his upcoming schedule, because that may have a little bit to do with it as well. And let's see here.
Well, he has San Diego this week.
San Diego, and that's, San Diego, they're an enigma as well, so that might be a toss-up. And then we got Baltimore in week 9, and we know they're having some issues on their defense.
I was going to say that suddenly doesn't seem to be as scary as it was a few weeks ago.
No, it doesn't. That's quite surprising. And then they have a bye in week 10, so there's some opportunity. As the bye weeks wind down, you may see fit to get him in there, but you're right. I'm not trusting him to be a starter, and I'm certainly not relying on him as my prime backup, I don't believe. So there's Brandon Weeden in a nutshell. Real quick, got a couple others that I want to ask you about. An old favorite of yours and mine, Santana Moss, is back in the picture, 67 yards and 2 touchdowns. So what's happening with him? Is he for real?
Well, he might be for real by default. The Redskins, obviously, Garcon has gone down. Now Fred Davis has gone down. So RG3 is losing his targets. I particularly am not. I'm still not sold on Santana Moss. I mean, he obviously had the 2 big. He had a 26 to 30-yard touchdown last week. I don't know that you're going to see better than that from him. Actually, frankly, I'd like to see and expect we might see Leonard Hankerson start to step up more and take a bigger role. I hope that's what we see as the year goes on. I think that's the better play for really for the future of the Redskins. For RG3 to develop more of a chemistry there. So I'm not even after that big week, I'm not in love with Santana Moss.
All right, Dustin Keller, 93 yards and a touchdown, 7 receptions on 7 targets, and we've heard a lot about the New York Jets passing game, and there's a little something from it. Granted, it was against New England, so is Dustin Keller for real?
I think Dustin Keller is on a different team. I think he'd actually be pretty good. With someone that actually can get him the ball. With all due respect to our loyal Jets fans out there, I think he's a solid backup tight end. I wouldn't go crazy on over him. I would think if you have like a Greg Olsen that's sitting out there, it's sort of the same kind of thing. It'd be back on Washington. It's interesting. After Fred Davis went down, Logan Paulson actually had a very nice game, 4 for 76. So I like Keller. I just don't trust the quarterbacks that much. I don't trust that they'll get him the ball consistently.
Yeah, that's a good call because Mark Sanchez, still I think it may just been more exposing the weakness of New England's defense. So there's some passing going on. But, I wouldn't want to rely on Dustin Keller. And you're right, I don't trust Mark Sanchez. One more question for you. Back to Arizona, 103 yards, and a touchdown for Andre Roberts. Is he John Skelton's favorite target, or is he just for real?
Well, I think anyone's favorite target on the Cardinals is by default if Fitzgerald's covered. But Andre Roberts has got to. He's got to be for real. I think he's had a few big games this year. He certainly week 6 against Buffalo sort of strangely disappeared against not a very good defense. But just the last 4 games he had 6 for 118 against Miami. Didn't have a lot of yards against St. Louis, but caught 5 balls. Then 7 for 103 last week. Andre Roberts is legit. I think he is like I said, I'll put him in the same category at this point as Randall Cobb. Certainly, I think a good flex, a good flex, an okay WR3. I don't know that he'll have the same potential to move up as Cobb just because, again, who's getting him the ball. But, I like Roberts.
All right. So I like him. I picked him up in a couple leagues. Ended up dropping him because I think I dropped him from Brandon Gibson in one league. I had Larry Fitzgerald, and I picked him up just as a flyer against Buffalo, which didn't do me much good. So I'm jury's still out. I'm just, again, talk about trust out of the quarterback, and I'm just not sure it's there. So, but it's definitely someone to keep an eye on for the waiver wire, and especially with all the bye week fill-ins, I think you could do worse. I think he's got some talent. So that's Andre Roberts. And I'll tell you what, we are running up against the break, and when we get back, we are going to go over some of the injuries and some ads for the week. But just want to remind everyone that we do have a call-in number, and that is 877-511-1024, and our chat room is up and going, so please feel free to get the questions going. This is Jumpin' John Prevost on the Piccadilly Inn Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show, and Judge Ray Jaffe will be back in 2 minutes.
Now is your chance to experience the new game that's transforming fantasy sports. Fantasy Player Exchange is a new daily game that allows you to compete against friends and fantasy foes for cash prizes. With FPX, you can select 5 players from any active sport. Sign up now at fantasyplayerexchange.com for your chance to beat ESPN Radio's Henry the Commish Brick and win $1,000 cash. Go to fantasyplayerexchange.com to sign up and play today. Remember, that's fantasyplayerexchange.com.
I'm sexy and I know it.
Car Toys.
I'm sexy and I know it.
Car Toys, the
I'm sexy and I know it.
Car Toys, the most innovative car customizing shop in its class. Summer is here, and so's the heat. Better get that remote start so you can cool off in your car in style
now with your smartphone. Car Toys can install remote start on a Mercedes-Benz, push-button start, and stick shift. Reduce that glare with the best 3M window film. And while you're at it, get your car detailed by Car Toys Detail Department so your ride looks, feels, and smells brand new. Car Toys defines what everything for your car really means, from TV to reality. That's why Car Toys is the leader in the industry in car customization. Car Toys' knowledgeable team are the best in their class. Like Car Toys on Facebook and check them out at distinctivecartoys.com.
Don't let your fantasy issues become a reality. Fantasy Judgment is the premier dispute resolution service for all fantasy sports leagues. Led by attorney Michael Stein, the Supreme Court of Fantasy Judgment will resolve any and all issues or conflicts that arise in fantasy leagues. This includes disputed trades, collusion, abuse of power by league commissioners, lineup and roster errors, draft issues, score discrepancies, and interpretation of league rules. We alleviate the burden for league commissioners and allow everyone to focus on winning their leagues rather than arguing over disputes. Visit www.fantasyjudgment.com.
Fantasy football owners, it's draft time, and KickassFantasyFootball.com makes it easy.
How do we make it easy?
Projections from the experts, cheat sheets with your scoring rules.
What else?
Articles all season long, waiver wire picks, trade advice, everything you need to win a championship.
How about a free judgment from FantasyJudgment.com, a $15 value?
Now we're talking.
Subscribe today for just $9.95 and we'll throw in a complimentary cruise for two to the Bahamas.
Cruise to a championship with KickassFantasyFootball.com.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Pickle-Ian Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show. And this is Jumpin' John Prevost with Judge Ray Jaffe, our fantasy expert. And special guest is Victor from Fantasy Player Exchange. So, Victor, are you on?
Yes. Hi, guys. How are you doing today?
Doing
hey,
great.
Victor.
Doing great.
Awesome.
So, yeah. So, Fantasy Player Exchange, it's a new and upcoming game. It's pretty exciting. And you get to pick whoever you want from any sport and beat the commish. And let's see how we did. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, we should say, I mean, Victor joins us relatively regularly on the show, but we should highlight that we're featured this week on Blog Talk Radio. So, Victor, it might be worth just a quick overview again for some of the new listeners that saw this show pop up when they logged on to Blog Talk Radio and clicked on and said, "Oh, well, let me see what these guys are talking about."
Sure. Well, FantasyPlayerExchange.com is a new website, and what it is, it's a fantasy game that you can use multiple sports in a daily game. So, for instance, if you have during the playoffs for baseball, if you're on a Sunday, if you have a playoff game going on for baseball, you have obviously professional football games. On the weekend, you can have we actually have college football also. You can have players from any sport that's active at that time playing on the same team. There's no roster. All you have to do is to have a minimum of 5 players. You have to use 20 shares of players, and you have to spend a minimum of $1,000 to $1,200 in play money, and that's it. So what we tell everybody is make sure that you get those guys that you feel are going to have those reaches. You know, you always want to go with the big names. You don't want to go always LeBron James or Aaron Rodgers. You may want to go with a Fitzpatrick, who you feel is going to have a good game against a weak defense.
And it's really become I'm hooked on it. I play every week. It's a lot of fun. It's a great way to sort of keep the action going, so to speak. It's much more targeted than some of your fantasy football teams that are, lots of players, and if your season's not going as well. So you keep the action going, and there's a great contest we have. Our fearless leader, the commish, is on, and he's throwing down the challenge to everyone, right? Beat the commish.
Yeah, right. I think we want to tell everyone, A, a little bit about your strategy, and B, just how good it feels to beat the commish.
Well, I'll tell you, and it's true. It's fun. Commission's obviously a friend of ours and a friend of the show's, and it's something to be said about you build up a little rivalry. I think you can get in leagues together with friends. You can compete head together against each other. So, coming into the year, the commission sort of threw down the gauntlet and said, I am such a fantasy guru that I am willing to take on all comers. And every week the commission makes its picks, and for just $2, I think, Victor, you can win $50 if you take down that if you take down the field that week.
Correct. $2 just to enter a weekly game, which is every Sunday, and it's our daily game called Beat the Commish. And on that game, if you beat the commish, you're at the highest percent out of everybody else, you're going to get $50 each week. And just so everybody knows, the commish has yet to win. So somebody's won every single week.
I'm sorry, Victor. Can you repeat that last statement? I didn't quite hear you.
The commish has yet to win. Someone else has won every single week.
Yes, that's it's great to hear. I'm happy to be one of those people who has actually taken down the commish and won. And
congratulations.
And there's there's definitely some different strategies people use. You sort of have the all-in strategy where you might go real heavy on one player you feel good about, or more of a balanced approach where you're spreading it out across a few players that you feel strong about, and sort of spreading out your risk a little bit. So there's some strategy to it as well. It's good stuff. You know what? I'm going to ask, Jumpin' John and then the engineering staff over here that if I happen to win this thing again, we got to get "We Are the Champions" uploaded onto our music carousel.
I like that request. I think we're going to have to make that happen.
Well, the commission keeps guaranteeing a win, so I believe he will eventually win one. We're just waiting for that day, I guess.
We're waiting. We're waiting. Well, it is. I think I saw a pig flying outside the window, so it could be this week.
Where his eyes glowing?
Well, I just want to mention also that we still have a promo going that anybody that signs up, any new sign-up, will get $10 free to play on our website. So you can play $10 worth of free fantasy games. The Beat the Commish game is a $2 game, so you can play it for 5 weeks straight. Or you can play the Beat the Commish game once, and you still have $8 to spend on our site. We have games starting at free, which will cost you nothing, up into $50 a game each day. So just log on to fantasyplayerexchange.com and check us out.
And so you have college football, your basketball starting, right? Couple days or couple weeks?
A little bit less than a week. We're going to have professional basketball, the NBA, obviously. We're going to have later on. We're looking to get college basketball in. Obviously, we're really looking for a bowl season for football, also for college. As everybody knows, that's like a month of joy. It's always a game, so it's coming up before you know it. And then after that, the real big thing that we're looking towards is college basketball, NCAA, March Madness. That is going to be insane. I mean, you know how that goes anyway. Everybody follows that to begin with. Just as you can have these top players every single week, 4 or 5 days in a row, constantly having a game.
Yeah, I think that's going to be huge. The tournament is such a team thing that it's a whole different angle to get some individual player action going. Outside of all your brackets and pools, to actually have some individual player action happen as well. It's pretty novel. I think that'll be a big hit.
But not only that, it's going to be hard.
Victor, you have the conference finals. The playoffs for the conferences. That's actually, I think, going to be a huge hit too, because I tell you, my brother-in-law used to go up to Madison Square Garden every year because he loved the Big East basketball. He went to Villanova, so he's obviously a Villanova fan, but just loved the game. So for all those fantasy junkies and basketball junkies, it's going to be definitely an exciting time.
No, we're looking forward to it. I mean, like I said, right now football is our main focus. I mean, every weekend you have great games. Right now you got Monday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday games. And even tonight there's a college game. So, I mean, there's always going to be something going on at fantasyplayerexchange.com. It's not like a typical football site where you have to wait for the actual night of the game. There's something going on every single night of the week.
Well, great. I once again, I appreciate you coming on and talking about it. It's always nice to hear about how the commission is doing. Especially when Judge Ray Jaffe beats them.
Yeah, so not this week. Again. One notch under him, but I'll get him next week. But it is great. Fantasy Player Exchange, great site, lots of fun, and as always, Victor, it's a pleasure.
All right, thanks guys for having me on. I'll talk to you next week.
All right, great, Victor. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Victor.
Okay, bye. All right, so Judge, I tell you, we were a little bit late going into our first break, and we're getting right back on schedule. So after that segment with Victor, I think we'll roll back into our commercials. And as soon as we get back, we're going to go over some of the big injuries for the week and, who's going to replace them and some additional adds. And then after that, we will roll into our stud, duds, and sleepers. So 2 minutes, get back with Jumpin' John and Judge Ray Jaffe on the Piccolo Inn Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show.
We're famous for our buffalo wings. The Piccalilli. When it comes to cooking wings, we're the king. The Piccalilli. Pull up a chair, grab a table, enjoy the atmosphere. Have something good to eat or have yourself a round of cheer. If you can't stop in, stop back. Great food, great drinks where everybody is a friend. If you can't stop in, stop back. The Piccalilli Inn.
It isn't fall without the famous Piccalilli Inn. Catch all of your favorite football action at the Piccalilli Inn. Check out the Pick's brand new menu featuring homemade buffalo chicken egg rolls, buffalo shrimp, scallops, and the tender Pick burger. They go great with one of the Pick's ice-cold on-tap beers. Catch every football game at the Pick. Enjoy an awesome meal while you watch your favorite team. The Piccalilli Inn, a Jersey tradition since the 1920s. On Route 206 in Chemung. If you can't stop in, stop back.
The Piccalilli Inn.
Fantasy Football, the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show. Every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. here on 97.3 ESPN. Join the professor, the commish, and fantasy insider Matt Lowry for the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show. Got a question? Call us. Who should you start? Who should you trade? Who's great? And who just plain The Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show. On the web at kickassfantasyfootball.com. Yeah, kickassfantasyfootball.com. And every Sunday at 9 a.m.
I felt that one way up here.
Right here on 97.3 ESPN.
Don't let your fantasy issues become a reality.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Piccolo Inn Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show. Judge Ray Jaffe, Jumpin' John Prevo. We're back for another half an hour talking about fantasy football. A couple of actually big injuries, I would say, for the week. And for all you Maurice Jones-Drew owners who held out faith that he would return to form, got back over his holdout, plugged him in the lineup, and now he's out. So Maurice Jones-Drew, Judge, I'm not really sure what's going on. I've heard a lot of different things from, mild sprain to Liz Frank injury. So, that could be anything from a game to the rest of the season. So I'm not sure what you've heard. What do you think is going to happen with Maurice Jones-Drew?
Yeah, sort of the same. I mean, I think for sure he's out this week. But it's funny as of the time of this show, which is still early in the week. I'm sure we'll get more information as the week goes on. There's a little uncertainty about the extent of it, but certainly he's out for next week. And my guess is, best case scenario, he's going to be out for at least a couple weeks.
Yeah, it concerns me when you don't hear things. I think it's one of those tenets that the longer it takes the information to come out, the worse the injury is.
Yeah, that's probably a good rule of thumb.
Yeah, so
yeah, cause they're busy getting second opinions, and they're really making sure before they come out and say, well, he's out for the season. They gotta make sure that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, you haven't heard any rumblings about him even attempting to get back to practice Wednesday. So yeah, I don't see it as good things. So immediately everyone's going to run out and add Rashard Jennings. So he proved himself, I think, in my book a little bit during the preseason and the first games. But is he worth the waiver wire? Is he worth blowing all your cash on for the pickup? What do you think of that?
Well, you know what, I will say this actually, just sort of looking through at some of the news in front of us, it looks like there's a report out there that he will not need surgery on his left foot, that it's a sprain, that he will probably be out for a few games, but it does not appear to be this Liz Frank injury, does not appear to be that. So we'll see if that's, early report, we'll see if that's accurate. But it sounds like minimally he's out a few games. So your question about Rashard Jennings, Jennings is I like Jennings. I mean, he's a pretty versatile back. He actually didn't have a particularly good week filling in for him, MJD. Actually, it's very surprising against the Raiders' defense. It's not very good. I mean, Jennings ran 21 times for 44 yards, but he did catch 7 passes for 58 yards, and I think that's where a lot of his value lies. So, particularly in a PPR league, I absolutely would look to get Jennings added to the team.
I think you have to, especially since the next injury is Blaine Gabbert. He's out with a shoulder injury. I think it's more day to day. Chad Henne came in as his backup, didn't look great. So the running game may be all that they really have, depending on the health of Blaine Gabbert. So I'm not really sure if you've heard much more about Gabbert's injury, but I think you have to go out and pick up Jennings just as insurance.
Yeah, I know. I mean, he's certainly going to be. I mean, it's the kind of situation where he is the clear backup. Jennings will be the guy they're going to give the ball to. So he's got that. I mean, Jacksonville obviously has Green Bay coming up this weekend, which is not. That's where I think you might get actually a fair amount of value out of Jennings catching the ball, because I'd be hard pressed to see where he's going to get 20 to 25 carries in the game. I just don't think the game's going to go that way. But he certainly could catch 5 to 8 balls and turn that into 50, 60, 70 yards. So I'm with you. I think you got to pick up Jennings, and I would put him in this week as a flex.
No, I think that's a great point to make, because those running backs that catch the balls out of the backfield, just like Matt Forte, and the value skyrockets, especially in PPR. So, any back that has the hands like that, I think it's definitely worth a start. And just as a note, that after Green Bay this week, they go up against Detroit and then Indianapolis. So there's some opportunity for some yards for Jennings, and I think, in my book, he's got to be the number one waiver party.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. All right, real quick, we have a caller. I think it might be Jersey now, so let's go and see what he has to say. So is this Jersey now? There you go.
Guys, Jersey here. How you doing? Hey, got a quick question. I had a trade proposal. I don't think I'm going to do it, but here's my thing. I'm 5-2. I'm in first by a game. The problem is I have McFadden and I have Trent Richardson, and I lost this week by 2 points because the running backs just ain't cutting it for me. And on the bench I have Darrell Richardson from St. Louis, and I have Michael Bush. What I have as my receivers, A.J. Green, who's been phenomenal. He's the number one in our league. He's given 110 points. I have Reggie Wayne, I have Amendola, who's hurt, and I also have Bryant. A guy proposed, he wanted to give me Doug Martin and Dwayne Bowe for A.J. Green and Michael Bush in a standard league, and I kind of laughed. I said, give me Foster. He's the number one back. I got the number one receiver. He scored 134 points as we're what's called at 110, which would be a fair trade because he's hurting that receiver. So what's your feeling on this offer that he gave to me? I don't think I should go for it, even though I'm a little bit weak at backs. He should be good. What's your take on it?
Yeah, my take is I almost never support a deal where you're giving away the best player in the deal, and that's what you'd be doing. Trading Green. So I generally, almost all the time, I'm on the other side of the deal. Whoever's getting the best player is usually making out. So I don't like it. I think I think you stick with McFadden. I actually think McFadden could have a nice week this week against Kansas City. And I would not do anything with Green. You know what? You just weathered Green's worst week of the season with 1 catch for 8 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah.
It's gonna he's a monster. I mean he might be the best. He's scoring like it and might be the best wide receiver in the league.
He's number one in our league. He scored 110 points. So and then Cruz is next. And my other league I have Cruz, who's up there. But again. My backs are good if they'll do something. Like I said, I didn't think Trent Richardson would give me 1 point. You know what I mean? And like I said, McFadden, hey, it is. I don't know what's going on with him and that Raiders. And like I said, A.J. Green's been a workhorse. He can have a bad week. Things happen. You know what I mean? But my backs are absolutely killing me. And Romo, so that's where it's at. But I'm 5-2, but I've been lucky. So that's why I wanted to talk to you guys because I didn't feel. I don't want to give away that good a thing.
I wouldn't do it. John, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with the judge on this one, and I agree with Flossie as well. You know, if you're giving up the best player, you really need to get a lot back in return. And A.J. Green is obviously the best player in the group of that. And I also agree that you just saw his worst game of the year. Right. So the only problem you have is, which, A.J. Green has a bye this week. So you can't rely on him obviously during the bye.
Right.
But
I got Dez and Reggie Wayne in there now this week.
Yeah,
I hope we hear from you next week, because I think both your running backs are actually going to have good games this week. I think Richardson and McFadden both have good games against San Diego and against Kansas City.
Yeah, they said they might shut down. They might try to shut down Richardson until week 10 or something. Actually,
that's possible.
Yeah. So if that happens and I go on, I can put him on IR and there really isn't anything out there. I guess would you start Michael Bush or would you start Richardson from St. Louis? If Trent Richardson gets shut down, would you go with Darrell Richardson from St. Louis or would you go Michael Bush? Because I have Forte in my other league. I really don't want Michael Bush to play because then you cut in a Forte in my PPR league. I'm 6-1 in.
John, this might be right in your wheelhouse because I think we're going to hear about the other side of the Richardson deal later today. What do you think? Where would you go with this?
Well, they're both backups, so at that point, I think you strictly have to look at the matchup. And Richardson is going against New England, who has been tough on running backs, and again he's backup. And Bush is going against Carolina, who they did well last week, but they have not been known for their rushing defense. As a matter of fact, they've gotten shredded. So, and Bush definitely gets in on goal line situations. He's definitely vulturing touchdowns. So I'm thinking you go with Bush there and hope for the touchdown, if not two.
Actually, you know what I would do too if he's available? Pick up. I gotta think of the guy's name. From the Colts, if he's going to play, Vic Ballard.
Oh yeah, he's already taken.
Oh, okay.
And in both legs, he's another one. Now my kid's trying to put in for. He's 4-3. He gave me my first loss this week, 115 to 122. I tell you, I hate what Lovie Smith does with Forte. Forte is 96 yards. Okay, he gets me 100 yards. I get another 5 bonus points. What is it with them and Bush and this week where Bush doesn't run the ball? It's killing me. Same thing with Ridley. Ridley killed me this week against my kid. It's like, what is going on? And the same with Matthews. I'm 6-1. I mean, I'm loaded. I have Julio Jones. I have Cruz. I have 49ers. I have Vernon Davis. I have Witten. I have Brady. But my running back.
Jersey, be happy. You're 6-1 and 5-2. So you got a little cushion,
Yeah.
So So don't worry about it. Don't trade the best player.
Don't trade Green. I think we both feel strongly. Don't trade Green.
Good. Yeah. Okay, well, then we're thinking alike. Then I appreciate it very much, guys. Best of luck to you guys this week. Thanks for the advice as usual. You guys have a good evening.
All right, Jersey.
All right, Jersey. Great hearing from you.
Bye-bye. Yeah, bye-bye.
So, bye. So, yeah, I mean, so Green, after the bye, he's got Denver, the Giants, and Kansas City coming up. So I think Jersey's just going to be fine keeping them. Reggie Wayne's a solid contributor. Des Bryant's having some issues, so I'm not really sure what's going on there. But so I think he'll weather the storm. All right, so one other name that we want to kind of keep an eye on for injuries. So maybe there's a potential for picking up a backup. Sean Green injured his shoulder, and again, it's another. Not really sure what the status is. He went out of the game. I don't know if he's going to be ready for this week. So, what have you heard about Sean Green, and what does that mean to your fantasy team?
Yeah, definitely watch it. It's funny because 2 weeks ago, I think Jets fans would have been dancing in the streets if Sean Green got hurt. Then he had that crazy monster game 2 weeks ago, and it sort of. It was better, but a little bit more like Sean Green last week. I think you have to watch it. What's interesting is, they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, including Tebow and Sanchez, they had 7 people carry the ball last week.
Wow.
So they're really spreading around. Actually, Joe McKnight got some carries. So I don't know that anyone's going to really be the guy to step in. Bilal, I don't know. Powell was the guy who I think Mashula had ticketed to step in, but he wasn't available either. So it's if Green's not hurt, I think he just steer clear of the whole Jets running back situation.
Yeah, but again, he may be in a pinch, or other teams may be in a pinch, but I agree with that. It's just kind of a mess. Another running back of note, special place in my heart. I own him on several teams. Ben Tate. He injured a hamstring, and he's, I believe, day-to-day. Not sure he's a starter for most of your teams, but just something to keep an eye on. And then we mentioned it earlier, Fred Davis. I guess it's a torn Achilles. He's out for the season. So, we mentioned Paulson stepping up, but they also signed Chris Cooley.
How about it?
So, yeah.
Gotta love it.
I mean, are you getting anywhere near Chris Cooley?
I don't think so. I don't think so, and not because Paulson actually had a pretty good game, like we talked about earlier. After Davis went down, so I gotta imagine that Paulson's going to still be the guy that's going to get the majority of snaps. It's just it's one of those things like blast from the past. Like I don't even know what Chris Cooley was doing, but he wasn't playing tight end, so it'll be really interesting to see how that experiment goes.
All right, so it's just interesting to have him back. Just want to add that Santana Moss, actually filled some of those shoes in for Fred Davis, but I think we got your opinion earlier on him. Another couple ads we just want to make sure everyone to be aware of. Brady Quinn has been named the starter quarterback, so maybe if you're desperate, but
I think you hit the nail on the head if you're desperate.
Matt Hasselbeck gets another start, but it has been made clear that when Jake Locker is healthy, he will be the starting quarterback.
And that's the right move there.
Yeah. We'll throw Josh Freeman in there just because we've talked about him a bunch the past couple of weeks. He's still doing great, so if he's available, I think he definitely needs to be added to your team. Trent Richardson, we talked about having he's still sore ribs, got pulled to the second half. So Montario Hardesty, still out there in a lot of waiver wires, so it's definitely worth a grab. And then, question that you can maybe talk about a little bit, Jeremy Curley. He ended up having a decent game for the Jets. We talked about Dustin Keller, but Jeremy Curley also had a decent game. So, again, I'm just wondering if it's more the New England defense or if, you have someone who's addable on your roster. So what do you think about that, Ray?
He is interesting because 2 weeks ago against Houston, he actually had a pretty good game. He went 5 for 94. So, this quarterback situation obviously scares you. Jets don't have a lot of options, though, to throw the ball to. So I think I would take a flyer on Curley again. He's not a guy that's usually going to get into my lineup, but, if you have enough guys on bye weeks, if you have some other injuries, he's worth a roster spot. He's certainly worth a roster spot. He's sort of been up and down, 2 for 12, 5 for 94, 3 for 24, 7 for 120. It's his big week last week. So that's a lukewarm endorsement. Worth a roster spot.
Worth a roster spot. And on that note, we will go into our final commercial break. Fantasy expert Judge Ray Jaffe, it's been a pleasure as always so far. Jumpin' John Priva will be back in 2 minutes, and we will go over our favorite segment, and that is the studs, and sleepers. So 2 minutes.
I'm sexy and I know it.
Car Toys, the most innovative car customizing shop in its class. Summer is here, and so's the heat. Better get that remote start so you can cool off in your car in style with your smartphone. Car Toys can install remote start on Mercedes-Benz, push-button start, and stick shift. Reduce that glare with the best 3M window film. And while you're at it, get your car detailed by Car Toys Detail Department so your ride looks, feels, and smells brand new. Car Toys defines what everything for your car really means, from TV to reality. That's why Car Toys is the leader in the industry in car customization. Car Toys' knowledgeable team are the best in their class. Like Car Toys on Facebook and check them out at distinctivecartoys.com.
Fantasy football owners, the Kick-Ass Fantasy football owners, the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football. Fantasy football owners, the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show is back every Sunday this season with everything you need to cruise into a championship. Join me, the Professor,
and me, the Commish, along with Fantasy Insider Matt Lowry. Get all your fantasy football news as we break down all the players and tell you who to start and who to trade while we take your calls all show long.
We'll see you every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. all season long here on 97.3 ESPN. Check us out on the web at kickassfantasyfootball.com.
Now is your chance to experience the new game that's transforming fantasy sports. Fantasy Player Exchange is a new daily game that allows you to compete against friends and fantasy foes for cash prizes. With FPX, you can select 5 players from any active sport. Sign up now at fantasyplayerexchange.com for your chance to beat ESPN Radio's Henry the Commish Brick and win $1,000 cash. Go to fantasyplayerexchange.com to sign up and play today. Remember, that's fantasyplayerexchange.com.
Well, all right, everybody. Welcome back to our final segment. This is Jumpin' John Prevost and Judge Ray Jaffe from the Pickle Inn Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show. Our website, www.kickassfantasyfootball.com. So, Judge, I'll tell you, studs, and sleepers. I think we want to kick this off in grand fashion.
Well,
so
then you should probably start.
I will go first. That's right. And my stud of the week, and I will caveat this by saying it's really the only one I got right out of the 3. And I was going to go in another direction I should have for my dud. But anyhow, Chris Johnson, 18 rushes, 195 yards, 2 touchdowns, stud of the week. I think he was, in almost any format, the top scorer in fantasy football.
I think you're probably right. Maybe in a PPR league, Vincent Jackson would have. Maybe in a PPR league, Vincent Jackson might have edged him out, but that was a rock star pick, no question about it. Especially, with his up and down season, it wasn't like you were, saying Arian Foster stud of the week. I think it was a legitimate pick of a guy that's been a big question mark.
Yeah. So, again, one of our rules, there's certain people we just don't pick for some of these, and as Ray mentioned, we're not going to pick Arian Foster. In the past, you would never pick Chris Johnson, but with the way he's been playing of late, I like the matchup. He has had a great history against Buffalo, so I'm feeling pretty good. What about yourself for your stud? How do you feel about that?
I am not feeling as good. I picked Felix Jones, who I thought was actually going to have a very big week against a pretty poor Carolina defense. DeMarco Murray was out, figured he'd get his chance to do his thing, and wound up not doing all that much. 15 carries for 44 yards, 5 catches for 30 yards. So, it's funny, if I sort of was bargaining on 20-25 touches for Felix Jones, but I figured against Carolina and with what I thought was his breakaway ability, 20-25 touches for Felix Jones, I figured it was going to translate closer into 150 yards, not 74 total yards.
Yeah, I almost made him my dud of the week, and especially after hearing that you had him as a stud, just to spite you, I guess, and would have been a much better pick. I agree. He had all the opportunity against Carolina. I'm surprised. I know Dallas has had their issues with their offensive line. I don't know if that just means that DeMarco Murray is that much better, and that may very well be the case. But yeah, it's just an injury waiting to happen. So relying on Felix Jones for anything is really risky.
Yeah, it is. And that's John. You bring a great point. I mean, that's part of what we do here, and trying to, when we talk fantasy football, you're not going to get them right all the time, but you just sort of. One thing you want to do is look at the situation, and if you start a guy that you think is going to have a good week, and a guy has 20-25 touches, I'm not talking about Felix Jones, but anyone. I mean, that's what you need to do. Now, if the guy doesn't do anything with those touches, but part of it is understanding how you think the game's going to flow, and is the team going to get behind early, up early. So, I think that's a great point you sort of hit on a little bit as well. Is just what do you expect from the player coming into the week as far as how much action they're going to get.
Yeah, the opportunity was there for him. So let's move on. Yeah, I was going to pick him for my dud. I ended up picking Sean Green. I thought, it was a 1 week wonder. He ended up with 54 yards. It was only 3.4 yards per carry, but he did catch 6 balls for 34 yards. He had 1 rushing touchdown. So I could not call him a dud.
No, that's frankly, that's probably his second best game of the year, or maybe third best game of the year, which isn't saying much for Sean Green, but it's that's just solid. Like if you played Sean Green and he got that, you'd say, okay.
Yeah. Speaking of solid, your pick for dud of the week was very solid and pretty dead on.
Yeah, but the only pick I really got right or in good shape was I picked my dud was Joe Flacco, who had a terrible time against the Texans, 21 for 43, sacked 4 times, threw 2 interceptions, did throw a touchdown, quarterback ranking of 45.4. His yardage, he didn't throw for many yards either. I don't have that in front of me, but it wasn't a big number. And
147 yards, I think. Yeah,
147 yards. So, it's a really poor game. And in any sort of league where you got to actually get some leagues deduct for the amount of times the quarterback gets sacked, so I get deducted for interceptions, he would have given me a very low point total.
Yeah, there's a phrase an old coach of mine used to say, smash him in the teeth, and Houston just smashed him in the teeth. He just looked awful, and much credit to the Houston defense. So hopefully he has some bounce back into him, but just not a good game.
Yeah.
So speaking of not good, my sleeper of the week, Jermaine Gresham. I really thought. I'm a big Pittsburgh fan, but they're looking a little slower on defense. The linebackers haven't been great. Just haven't been the Pittsburgh defense of old. And I thought they were a little vulnerable, especially at the tight end spot. So I had Jermaine Gresham, all of his 3 receptions for 19 yards. So let's just put him to sleep now.
I was going to say, and as we say about our sleeper picks like that, they're still sleeping.
That's right.
And my sleeper pick was Brandon Gibson from the Rams, who was sort of like, as you could be. He caught 5 for 60, which is That's sort of what he does every week. I obviously was thinking he might step that up a little bit, have a bigger week. So can't really give a lot of credit to myself for calling him the sleeper of the week when that's sort of basically what he's been doing all week long. He didn't do worse. He didn't really do better.
Yeah, they're just not getting a whole lot of touchdowns through the air, and when they do, it seems to be Givens making a big play. So you got to stick with them, especially in PPR. But it has not been spectacular. I agree with that. So why don't we roll right in, and we've got a few minutes left. Let's go over this week. What do you got? Who's your stud of the week, Ray? What do you got for us?
I'm torn between 2 guys on the same team. I think I'm looking forward to the Sunday night New Orleans-Denver game. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored. So for stud of the week, I'm torn between Eric Decker and Demaryius Thomas. I think everyone's going to have a big offensive game. New Orleans spreads it out more. I'm going to go with Demaryius Thomas. I think he'll have a really big week. A lot of balls going up through the air. So Demaryius Thomas.
All right. So I like that. My stud is probably someone coming into the season that we shouldn't have had here. Matt Forte, and I'm putting him in here because he's been solid, but he hasn't been spectacular. He's had a couple good games. But I'm really expecting him to break out. Carolina did pretty well, obviously, against the rush last week against Dallas, but I'm expecting bigger and better things against them this week in Matt Forte. So I think it's time for him to step up, and especially, Chicago passing team's been having some issues. So Matt Forte is my stud.
All right. Matt Forte it is. Hopefully he'll get those goal line carries.
Yeah, well, all right. Way to rub it in. All right, real quick, dud of the week, Ray. Who do you got?
Dud of the week, we need sound effects for this, but I am going to go out on a limb and say RG3. It's going to be a dud this week. I guess that's relatively speaking.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
That is the perfect sound clip for that pick. RG3, who has been beyond phenomenal as a rookie. Quarterback ranking over 100. Rushing for all kinds of yards. I feel like the Steelers. They're off this year a little bit, but I feel like Dick LeBeau still, the Steelers defense, starting to get a little healthier. I think they're ready to dial it up once against a rookie and make it difficult for RG3. So I don't expect to come off on here and say RG3 threw for 90 yards and ran for 20 yards, but I think we're going to see a very different type of output from RG3.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you. I think Pittsburgh defense has a lot to prove, and maybe this is the week they prove it against a rookie quarterback. It's always a tough call going against Pittsburgh. I'm going to go with another veteran, my dud of the week. Alluded to it earlier in the show, Steven Jackson. I just think New England, they're a tough defense. I think that there's has to be more passing against New England. It's the only way to beat them, and I think Steven Jackson is going to cut it out of catching the balls out of the backfield, and so I think he's just not going to have a good game.
I think that's a good call, actually. I mean, there's Richardson, Jackson are sort of even on touches, and minimally they're just not using him as much. So I think that's certainly in your favor there.
Well, yeah, Darrell Richardson, I believe, is our out of the backfield pass option anymore. He's a rookie. He's got a little more fresh legs, and he's in a game like this, I think he's going to step it up more so than Steven Jackson. And sleeper. All right, let's get this right this week. Who's your sleeper of the week, Judge?
All right, well, this guy will certainly count as a sleeper because he's coming off a miserable week. Alex Green from Green Bay is my sleeper this week.
Wow.
He went 20.
Wow.
This is assuming he's even going to have a job next week, but he carried 20 times for 35 yards. Brutal. But he carried 20 times. Green Bay doesn't have a lot of other running options. They have Jacksonville coming up. Like I said, Green Bay's starting to click. Jacksonville, I mean, they might not even have their quarterback. They don't have their lead running back. Unless Green Bay really falls asleep at the wheel, I think it's a total mismatch. Some of this I do chalk up. I think some of the stats I'm going to chalk up to probably garbage time stats, but I'm gonna like Alex Green this week to put up some decent numbers.
I'll have to say I generally like your calls. I'm not in agreement with this one. I just don't think Alex Green has what it takes. Get a little biased. I'm a Cedric Benson owner, so I'm kind of waiting for him to get back. So maybe I just don't want him to succeed. But that, I guess again, if he's going to do it, Jacksonville's the team to do it against. All right, for my sleeper, I'm going looking on the milk cartons, and I'm looking for Michael Vick. He just has not cut it this year. He's turnover prone. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. And I think this might be his last chance. They're coming out of the bye week. Andy Reid is, I believe, 13-0 out of the bye weeks. So again, if there's a week to do it, it's this week. He gets to go against Asante Samuel, and I think maybe the Eagles have something to prove that they should have let him go. So I think this is the week Michael Vick gets it going, keeps a little ball control, and has a good game in a shootout against Atlanta.
I actually like it. I think it's a really good pick. He needs to have a big game. He's got something to bring to Atlanta, and I'm waiting for that Eagles offense to really have a breakout game. You might hit it on the head this week.
All right. Well, let's hope so, especially being the Eagles fans that we are. And I think we're going to end our show. We have Jersey back calling again, so let's find out what Jersey has to say. Jersey, are you there?
Hey guys, I apologize for bothering you. I meant to ask you this. Hey, in my PPR league, I normally go with Cruz and I go with Julio Jones and Cruz. I have Demetrius Moore on there. I have Malcolm Floyd. I was thinking about dropping Malcolm Floyd to pick up Lance Moore, especially in the PPR league. Because Floyd he's been okay, but I don't really play him much. But in case my other guys get hurt, I wanted some, somebody with a pretty good quarterback. What's your feeling on that? Would it be the right thing? Because on this league, they don't do trades. So I'm looking to flip maybe.
I think for this week, I think Moore is probably still a great play. I'm wondering what happens, when they get, when New Orleans gets a tight end back. I'm not sure if he's going to carry it through for the rest of the year. But I think this week, especially against Denver, they're going to be airing it out. So I think for this week, it's a great pickup. So what do you think, Judge?
Well, yeah, I was just talking about it. I think that's going to be a really high-scoring game, the Denver New Orleans game. So I certainly like Lance Moore in that game. I have to look at the schedule a little bit more to see Floyd versus Moore like remainder of the year.
Right.
But I'll tell you, next week I do expect Floyd to have Moore to have a bigger game than Floyd.
All right, so next couple of weeks, because I'm always going to probably play Cruz and Jones. It's just I want some bench depth in case it gets hurt, somebody gets hurt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So and we have no IR in this league, so that's why.
Yeah, it's never a bad thing to have more on your bench either. So you never know what. Yeah, those breakouts are going to come. So.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it very much. Sorry to bother that last question. You guys have a good day. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Jersey.
Bye-bye.
There you go. All right, well, that's about all we have time for, Judge. So, I appreciate the hour, a little bit over, and I look forward to it every week. And for our tens and tens of listeners out there, it's been great talking to you. So,
John, always a pleasure. I will catch you next week.
All right, remember, this is the Piccolo Inn Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show. Our website is www.kickassfantasyfootball.com, and we'll see you all next week.